Well, we're live. We're live, and yeah, I'm very excited about this interview. So I'm joined by a dear friend and mentor of mine, Paul Dunn, and yeah, really looking forward to this presentation. Maybe let's start by, and I will give the full links to your bio, your vast bio, and everything else. But do you want to just give the very quick synopsis of what your background is and why I'm talking to you today?
Sure. One of the disadvantages of being, sort of quite old is that, although not feeling that, is that your bio, sort of stretches out. So whenever anyone asks me on a podcast, so give us your history, and I go, well, that's the entire podcast. So yes, I mean, for me, life is all about being lucky. I just feel I've been incredibly lucky in my life. For example, being one of the first 10 in Hewlett Packard way back when in Australia, and having that that really amazing grounding with Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, then going on to create my own computer company, and then realizing that there was more to life than computers. It was really all about people, and then creating various networks, one of which had 23,000 businesses in it, another one of which had 17,500 accountants in it, and then selling all of that at one particular point and going to live in France, and then realizing, you can probably tell, retirement is not my sort of thing, right? So and then discovering that there was more to life than I thought. If you'd have asked me in 2007, you would have said, well, what's life about? I would have said, well, what business is about, at least for me. And I'm not saying that, Callum, this should be what business is about for everybody, but for me, it was all about adding immense value to the people that I was privileged to serve. And it was all about having fun doing that. Right? That was it. And then in 2007, along with other people like Branson, who, discovered the same kind of thing, it was in 2006, 2007, on the cusp thereof, where I discovered, whoa, there's something else. And it happened to me, as it often does, around times of quote-unquote crisis. Except in this case, it was 18 months after the crisis, and that was in 2000. The crisis I'm referring to was the tsunami, the Asian tsunami in 2004. And so 18 months later, what happened there really hit me. I don't mean that to be a pun. And all of a sudden you realize, you're in this very privileged position, and maybe that brought with it some obligations. And so that was when I came across B1G1, or Buy One, Give One, as we called it at that time, which was this amazing idea that wouldn't it be great? And I think we're seeing this, by the way, playing out in all sorts of ways right now. So wouldn't it be great if every time business was done, something great happened in our world? I mean, just pause for a moment and think about that, right? It really would be great if that happened. And so that was the whole concept, if you like, behind B1G1, which is what I've spent the last 13 years or so of my life talking about, and encouraging people to be a part of that movement. And as a result of that, of course, you can't help but notice certain things, right? You can't help but notice that if 4 years ago you'd have said ESG, people said, sorry, did you mean ECG? What is that? So what you see is this. I mentioned tsunami before. It's not unlike that, except it's a positive way, with so many people, jumping, if you like, on the opportunities that are there. In fact, I got something in my mailbox this morning, which or in my inbox, I should say, which was something from Europe, and here's what it said. It said, with Europe leading the charge on the 31, now listen to this next phrase, trillion charge on sustainable investing, the investment community is fully aware of, and this is also interesting, the serious returns at stake just from the climate revolution. I mean, so these are very, very interesting times. About 18 months ago, I was talking with a banker from Australia who said, according to his stats, the whole sort of impact investing thing had over the past 2.5 years increased 715% from his point of view. So, there's massive stuff going on, and that's why I'm thrilled to be a part of this with you.
Cool. So, look, I want to go into that more, and I know that 3B1G1, you have a lot of visibility of a lot of the projects that are happening on the ground. So while it's great that so many people are talking about ESG and impact, and certainly I know from my talks, speaking to private investors and institutions and funds in the past 12 months, it's really sort of a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Is it still, are you seeing it still as being more theoretical than practical, or are you really starting to see some some of the actual impacts starting to filter down?
I see those every day. It really is about amazing impacts, and the reason that I see them, by the way, is because we're working in in a sense sort of very fine things. We're looking at tiny things which actually produce huge change, and because of that, we don't have, I don't want to say constraints, that's the wrong word. Sometimes what happens is people kind of throw a lot of money at stuff hoping things will happen. Well, we don't do that. So we get into the projects with which we're involved, and literally bring things down to sense that can really make a difference in people's lives, or in the community of which they live, as to access to water, or access to the things that you and I regard as normal, right? Or access to education, for example. So yeah, we see that. I mean, we look in, for example, we look in India at one very simple example, and the Indian government, God bless it, will tell us that education is free, and it is. But in order to get it, you've got to have a school uniform, which of course is the catch-22, because some kids don't have a school uniform, and so they don't get to go. And so right now we have 280 schools, 280 of them in rural, and I mean top of mountains, India. Where first of all the kids love going to school. So even though their parents were saying things like, come and work on the farm, we need your manual labor, and the kids say, no, we enjoy going to school now because of this e-learning thing. And so what we see happening is the kids changing dramatically. You can go from one village where they've got it and one village where they haven't, and it's like you're in a different country. We're also seeing that the kids there are outperforming the kids in the city. And the really cool news is that their parents can see it as well. So they go knock on the door of the quote-unquote school and talk to the quote-unquote schoolmaster or school mistress and say, hey, listen, would you mind if you open the school at night? Because we've seen the difference that learning makes to our kids. And so we love to learn. And the really magic thing about that is that the school master obviously says yes, but the real magic thing is at that point it's the kids teaching the parents. You see this, and I think that's one of the really interesting things. It's this sort of circular thing. We hear a lot about the circular economy, and when we look for projects, that's what we look for. It's not. Generally speaking, what you look for, you can't find it all the time. And we tend to look at not hand out. We tend to look at hand up, which of course is what impact investing is all about as well. But in some cases, you can't sort of say to a kid, "Oh well, hang on a second, I'm going to teach you how to build a well." You can't. You've got to build a well. But with those sorts of exceptions, we see it as a very positive thing. And then when you flip it around. I mean, that quote that I just gave you, look at the 31 trillion is an opportunity right there. Paul Polman, who, is correctly credited, I think, with being one of the most sustainable business leaders on the planet. I mean, you know what he did to Unilever. And now, as you know, he has the Imagine company, I should say. And he talks about the $130 trillion of investment. And he says, here's what he says. He says, we have never seen an investment opportunity like this in our world ever. That's the way he says it. Right? And here's someone who's not saying it as, an investment banker or so. Here's someone who's saying it as a leader of or until fairly recently anyway, a multi-billion-dollar business and saying that to us. And so impact investing and the whole thing, and by the way, all of the lovely constraints that people are building in. Constraints is the wrong word, but the making sure that things actually happen. Right? So that is also, as you know, part of the ESG kind of thing, and I think we're going to see much more of that. I think we're, I know the blockchain is kind of like a dirty word in some way because instantly we think of crypto, but we are going to be seeing things where we literally can see it happening almost in real time. We already have people who do things with virtual reality, and they just click in and bang, there they are. They've just given funds, and bang, there they are, live in the projects. I mean, it's amazing.
And I think that's you and I have been talking about social entrepreneurship for over a decade. And I do think there does seem to be this sea change in the last 12 months. Many more people talking about it, but also it does still feel very early days. And I think that accountability and that making sure that it's a genuine impact at the end of the investment versus the kind of the greenwashing. And one of the interesting things I thought about, which was I will be interesting to see whether it plays out in the investment community. But last year, the American Chamber of Commerce and the top 300 companies, for the first time ever, said that businesses are about more than just making money.
Exactly. They did. They certainly did.
Now, what's more shocking to me about that is that nobody outside of the American Chamber of Commerce hasn't thought that, for at least certainly in the world of small business. You try attracting great staff to come and work with you if you don't have a bigger mission. What I'm interested to see now is whether that kind of shifts into the investment world and people, say, well, look, I'm just not going to invest unless I see a bigger picture commitment. Are you seeing any kind of movement towards that?
Oh yeah, I mean, and you're seeing it in all sorts of ways. I mean, there's let me just bring up the quotes so that I don't misquote them. There's this lovely piece from the Harvard Business Review about 3 months ago, right? And it's saying that, and this is looking at it from the company point of view as opposed to the investment point of view, but nevertheless, there's a link, right? And here's what it says. And by the way, you're absolutely right to talk about what happens with team members and all that kind of stuff. But what this says is this: purpose-driven companies make more money, they have more engaged employees, they have more loyal customers, and they are better at innovation, I should say, and transformational change. So it's been there. And I think that also, I think in a way, one of the biggest things that I see, and I'm not sure whether everybody that we talk to sees this, although I do see a real shift going on, is the whole thing around the global goals, for example, or the SDGs or the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think the issue there is that on the 23rd of September 2015, when when those things were announced, we sort of went, "Oh yeah, it's the United Nations." Oh. and what we forgot, or at least some of us forgot, was that was the first time, seriously, the first time in history, when the world body said, "Hang on a second, we don't really need governments." This is really interesting. We don't need governments to be a part of this. If you want to be a part of it, that's fine, right? But it's the first time that the world body has said governments do not change our world. Now that's an interesting thought. Governments do not change our world. Certainly they can enhance it and, and through legislation do interesting things. But it is businesses that actually change our world. Businesses and their teams, their owners, and all that kind of stuff. And so, you have insightful people, like Mike Benioff at Salesforce, and so many of them who have been saying, reading from your playbook in some ways, Callum, that says this stuff is really important. And I think also what's kind of interesting. Can I just show you something that happened here in Singapore? Can I show you that?
Please do. Here in Singapore,
okay.
In
let me just
the
share.
forest that you're standing in.
Exactly so. Well, let me just show you how how that all kind of came together in a really fascinating way with what happened in Singapore. So typically, what happens is this, right? When we look at the global goals, then the sad thing about the global goals, I mean, these are things. Let me put them up on the screen here. These are things that we all know. Oops, Daisy. These are things that we all know that we have to. I mean, there's no option, right? We have to, right, achieve by 2030, right? And here are these 17 things, which the good guys at the UN put together. But when you look at those 17 things, oh yeah, okay, I got it, no problem. And underneath that, as you would know, there are 169 things, targets underneath all those things. The reality is that they're not easy to kind of get hold of, right? But Temasek is interesting, right? Because Temasek here in Singapore, as you know, is the sovereign fund, or is this part of the sovereign fund, right here in Singapore. And by the way, all of their investments now track these goals that you see on the screen. But what they did was say, well, why don't we look at it a slightly different way? And they just flipped it like that and said, well, what about if we make it really simple for people and we say it's ABC? So active economy, beautiful society, and clean earth. What if we did? Then all of a sudden, it changes our perception, and perception is everything with these things. So the active economy means productive jobs, sustainable cities, fulfilling lives. Beautiful society means resilient individuals, inclusive communities, and a just society. Now, even if we stop right there's nobody in the investment community who can say, "Wow, I want to be a part of that." Right? All of a sudden, we see it differently. And then, not surprisingly, with clean earth, that's the easy one. Fresh air, clean water, cool world. And when we see it that way, right, which is, I mean, it's the way, but it's just rearranging the goals. We haven't said anything new. We've just kind of shuffled the deck, as it were, so that it connects more. And that, I think, is the interesting opportunity, that word connect, so that we can connect investors and ESG together, so that we get this new understanding, A, that we've got to do it by 2030, B, that we've got to do it together, C, that it really is worth doing because, quote Paul Pullman, it is the biggest business opportunity that the world has ever seen. So, there's all sorts of reasons why we should be jumping over ourselves to get involved.
Yeah. No, it's good, and you just need to look at Temasek's investment record. It's pretty impressive. So just going on that from a business opportunity perspective, and there's two reasons why I wanted to get you to share your knowledge. One is obviously your deep insights into what's happening on the ground now and the work that you've been doing over the last 10 years. But I don't want to ignore it wasn't many years before that when you were a very successful business person in your own right. And also now through the work you do with B1G1, you touch a lot of small businesses around the world across multiple different industries. I know you mentor everything from kind of tech startups all the way through to kind of the traditional businesses that I tend to work with. If you're an investor sitting there watching this and thinking about, look, there's clearly huge opportunities in small business. There's a lot of these companies that are already, ESG is just hard baked into the company.
Oh yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah, exactly.
What are some of the opportunities? If you had your investor hat on now and you're looking at kind of sectors or you're looking at types of business, what are some of the things that you're seeing and could share with others?
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure that I'm necessarily going to answer it in the quote unquote correct way, because not that there is a correct way, but let me answer it the truthful way, which is probably the correct way. And what we're seeing, like if for example you take startups, and it doesn't matter where the startups are. Now, sure, they might be using tech in a particular way, but let's not call them tech startups necessarily. So you might see startups there. You might see startups who, and by the way, there are now startups who are starting up only for the reason that they want to solve the problems that are there. That's it, right? So it almost doesn't matter whether, and I look, I'm thinking of, for example, things that you wouldn't think of. I'm thinking of vets as a, for example, not veterans, but vets, right, who are baking in this whole idea of creating, of purpose and impacts and all of that. The other hand, I'm seeing dentists. So I find it. It would be useful if I could say, well, these are the industries. But I think there are lots of other ways where we can go and find industries that are quote unquote scheduled to, boom and everything else. But what we do see, here's what we do see, that more and more people, we're seeing, as you know, because you're part of it, we're seeing more and more people leaving corporate, right? Because they might be paid very well and all of that kind of stuff. But the problem comes when they go home at night and they put their head on a pillow and they say, is that all there is? Is that all there is? And, a long time ago, that's all there was, right? But now there isn't. And so what happens, you see, I think even in Australia, you see something like, I think the number is 74 new businesses per hour that are being created. And a significant number of those businesses, and the same sort of stats are pretty much, around the place. And almost all of those businesses have purpose and meaning and, built at the core, because the people running them recognize that they didn't have that in their lives, and now, so bang, they bake it in right from the start. So the safe bet is that when you see anybody who's really switched on, who's doing, exciting things, the reality is that they've probably got something going on in relation to making a huge difference to our world as well. And it might just be that creates a huge opportunity for the investment opportunity. Let me give you another example of it. About 6 months ago, I was in Seattle, and when you're in Seattle, you go and you see the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the work that they are doing is just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And then you get to go visit with Nathan Myhrvold, who was Bill Gates's first CTO, Chief Technical Officer. And here he is in a facility in Seattle. Get this, he's working with 400 PhDs, right? Trying to fix these issues, and of course getting investment from Mr. Gates and so on to to deal with these things. So, I mean, I just can't imagine the opportunities that are created by 400 PhDs. I really can't. But they're there. They're going to be coming more. I think that we're going to see ESG and all the associated acronyms that go with it. We're going to see that as, I hate using this term, but I think you know what I'm going to say, as the new normal. This is going to be the way business is, without any doubt.
Okay. So I'm not going to let you off the hook here. You touched on
that's something you do very well, not let people off the hook.
Exactly. So what you just talked about went from the gamut of early startups all the way up to the Bill and Melinda Gates world. If you're an investor, you're not massively familiar with the small business world. You see lots of pictures from small businesses that are starting up. They're trying to do good things. Now, you and I, over the years, have met hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are trying to save the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the funny thing is they don't. Yeah.
Just want a little bit of money to help them do that. Over the years, you must have learned some strategies for working out at fairly short order which are the ones that are actually going to make an impact and have a sustainable business versus those that are well-intentioned but more on the dreamer side.
Yeah,
not going to go anywhere.
Well, you exactly, you hit it, and well, I remember being in front of a group of. Well, I remember being in front of a group of people one day, and I said to this particular business owner, I said, "So why do you do what you do?" And she said, "I want to make a difference in the world." And I said, "Well, how do you do that?" And she said, "I want to make a difference in the world." Yeah, but how do you do that? No, I just want to make a difference. and so, I mean, it's like anything, right? It's like where you meet some people who, as you said, are well-intentioned, right? And you get it. And the reason you can get it, right, is because they're not specific, right? It's very simple, you know? But when they get very specific and they go, well, this is the issue. Here's the problem we see, right? Here's the problem we see. This is how we're going to fix the problem. And, you know, this is what is required to do it. And here's why we're working day and night to do that. That's a hell of a lot different than we're going to change the world, you know. It's almost like to change the world is like a secondary thing. That sounds like a silly thing to say, but, you know, it's very clear that that's, you know, they're on a particular path to do something that needs to be done, that they have seen, that they've experienced in some way, shape, or form, and they're really serious about it. And they also understand that, you know, if they've been working at it for 10 years, the marketplace is probably telling them something. Well, you know, if only someone would listen to my great idea as to how to create thermonuclear explosions in a cup of coffee. Yeah, but actually, no one's going to do that. You know what I mean? And if you've been doing it for 10 years, there's probably some messages there. And you and I know people, you know, who kind of did that. So, and I think that's the other thing. I think that, you know, investors in the ESG space can play a really valuable role, I think, in sitting with the people and giving them another perspective. You know, hey guys, you know, in order for this to work, we've got to do this. Right? Because that's not traditionally where the driven, from want of a better term, think about. And so the beautiful thing that I think is on the table is this opportunity to partner with some of the great people that are out there. And there are lots of great people out there. And as the EU said this morning, 31 trillion, as Paul Polman said, you know, 130, whatever the number is, never been a business opportunity like it. And I think, you know, there's so many messages like that, which are basically saying that there's never been a time like this where investors who are smart, right, And investors who understand the kind of thing, some of the questions that you've been asking me, for example, when you understand those are the key questions, and then when you can bring that experience into people who don't have it but actually need it in order to do the things that they do, bang, that's when beautiful things start to happen.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I think, look, I think your comment about specificity of language is so bang on. And I think anyone that, a key thing is it's great to have big dreams, but what are you standing on? What have you actually done up until now? Who have you persuaded to join the team? Who have you persuaded to get involved?
Exactly.
And what results have you seen? And I think having said that, from an investment standpoint, when you find these companies that are starting to get traction, they have the potential to grow so incredibly fast in today's world. I mean, with that much tailwind in terms of these massive funds, the government backing, the UN goals, all of these things, when somebody gets this right and can get the right team on board and get moving, if you're backing it, the rewards are going to be exponential and very exciting, and genuinely feel like you're doing something that's a net positive for everyone.
Oh, you're doing something great at the same time. But I love what you said. I mean, I think that the opportunities are really exponential. I think that's actually true. And sure, we might think this is new ground and there's new things being developed, and provided, we've got the right advice, people like you looking at, the way these whole things work and so on, provided we're seeing people getting the right partnerships in place and all of those sorts of things, then, it's a huge opportunity. And not just an opportunity to do good, as in potentially good, but an opportunity to do real good as well, and leave a legacy of which you're justly proud. So, yeah.
Awesome. Look, could speak all day, but very conscious of everyone's time. I would strongly recommend anyone watching this to go to b1g1.com and check out all of the projects that you guys have done.
Oh, yeah.
Over 200 million impacts given in the last 10 or 11 years. It's just staggering. But it's also a fantastic community of small businesses to tap into as well. So you'll see the businesses there that are doing great things. These are businesses that already have traction, already giving back. Giving is hard baked into their DNA now, and those are potentially great businesses to back and be a part of. So exciting times for investors in this area. We've got some great other videos coming up around the whole ESG and impact, and encourage you to stay tuned and keep watching. Thanks again, Paul.
Hey, Callum, thanks for hanging out. Just awesome to do that with you. Bye. Bye-bye.